Hello and welcome back to A Fall from Grace. I am still sick. Obviously because I just literally recorded the outro for the previous video. Anyway, so last we saw that Vincent and Cedric finally made up. They realized that they're not the same people that they used to be, and that all came at the behest of Dion, who kind of pulled Cedric aside and told him like, "Hey, dude, realize that it's been I don't know how many years since you've seen each other and you're barely getting to know each other, so there's going to be a lot of things that you don't know about each other, so I'm going to need you to like cool it and not be so obtuse with each other, and I need you to like make it work because he kind of owes me some stuff, and I need you guys to work for this heist because that's the only way that you two are getting out, in other words. But yeah. It is a good thing that Dion pulled Cedric aside to talk to him about that, though, instead of having Cedric talk to Ridley, because they might have gotten like a different perspective on things, and you could tell that Dion is the good leader, the good bandit leader, because he is aware of the things that are going on, but like everyone else is also aware of it. You're in such a close-knit group that everyone's they're all bound to know, what's going on with you. Anywho, so we're actually now gonna switch gears and see somebody else's, I guess you could call it backstory, in a way, why they're the way they are. But yeah, so we have that to look forward to anyway, so yeah, let's continue. Are you ready, Lee? A knock on the doorway to Lysander's room followed, as Cedric tapped his foot impatiently on the carpeted floor, waiting for his friend. Yes, yes. Why must you pressure me so? You're the one who wanted to attend this thing. I would have been perfectly content staying at home and playing a round of cards. The door swung open, revealing the lion wearing an elegant outfit, with an arm resting on the wall and his legs crossed in an almost provocative manner. His suit was relatively simple but still elegant, with a number of tiny decorative flourishes complementing the formal design. The large pink bow that hung on the lion's left hip matched those of his shoes, with a strikingly bold design choice. In fact, it was the element that had first caught Cedric's eyes when the two had purchased their outfits a week earlier. I wanted to attend this, my dear Cedric, for your sake. Now how do I look? The coyote carefully eyed his friend up and down. There was no hiding it. Lysander looked very impressive, almost menacing, giving off his usual air of confidence. As expected, you look great. Told you that suit was a good choice. Thank you for suggesting it. Lysander gave the coyote an exaggerated bow of thanks, bringing a smile to both their faces. How about me? What do you think? The lion gazed at him without varying his neutral facial expression, feigning all the apathy that he could muster. It'll do. Then, without any hesitation, he walked away at a steady pace, heading for the living room, both friends bursting out laughing as Cedric chased after. Scoundrel. Fine, fine. You look exceedingly handsome. However, as a gentleman, it is not my place to say so. I will let the ladies be the judges of that this evening. Reaching the living room, Lysander called out for his aunt's maid. Nancy, bring us some water. The maid appeared a few seconds later, carrying a tray with a jug of water and a pair of drinking glasses. Good evening, Master Lysander, sir. And to you too, Master Cedric. Cedric smiled and nodded as a reply, picking up one of the glasses and sipping the cool liquid. Tell my aunt that we are heading out this evening. I reminded her earlier, but knowing the old hag, she's probably forgotten already. Yes, sir. I wish you both a good time at the ball. We're going to be on the lookout for any suitable girls for Cedric, are we not? The lion playfully shoved his friend, almost making him drop his glass on the floor. Watch it, Lee. You told me that you wanted to go through with this a while back, and I am a man of my word. Nancy returned a soft and polite smile. It was clear that she had much preferred Cendric's character and temperament compared to Lysander's. In fact, she seems positively scared of the lion. I'm sure that you'll be very popular, Master Cendric. Thank you, Nancy. I've tried telling this menaceur that I am not interested in wooing as of yet. But to no avail, it would seem. Lysander had wandered over to the entrance in the meantime, sliding on his gloves and donning his overcoat. You are in no fit position for that sort of talk, Cendric. Now, enough dilly-dallying. We must be off. I'm coming. I was the one rushing you until 2 seconds ago. They stepped out the door and into the chilly evening air. The days were only just starting to get longer again, and the setting sun had colored the sky with a warm red hue. The two mounted an elegant carriage, Lysander taking the reins. Cendric sat beside him, still unsure as to whether he felt like dancing and socializing on that particular evening. But he had promised his friend that he would, and Lysander seemed excited enough about the whole matter, so much so that some of that excitement ended up rubbing off on the coyote. They sped along the quiet streets, soon leaving their hometown behind them. Lysander made some small talk along the way, filling Cendric in on which people he knew were going to be there, their quirks and any gossip surrounding them. The coyote enjoyed this, despite not being one to revel in hearsay. Most importantly, it helped him feel like he was an active part of the lion's friend group, since he was comfortable enough to share this information with them. They are a parcel of queer fellows indeed, truth be told. And my life would be a great deal more boring without them in it. However, none of them are like you, Cendric. You have something about you unlike most other gentlemen that I've met. Oh? What do you mean? Lysander carefully considered his next words. You do not show off, and you are not false like most of them are. It's what I've always liked about you. In fact, most people seem to be fond of you due to this, including my parents, which is a true blessing. Lysander mumbled under his breath. God knows that I can't earn their approval. He rested a hand on Cendric's shoulder affectionately. I will make sure that you have a great time this evening. It was during the moments like these that Lysander almost felt like an older brother to Cendric, despite his annoyances with the lion's behavior and manners at times. The coyote felt glad that he knew him and had him in his life. He was the one friend that had stuck with him despite his current situation. After a half an hour long journey, the two friends reached the Paladian country estate the ball was being held at. A couple of servants greeted them, driving the carriage to the stables after both Cendric and Lysander had dismounted, and taking the friends' hats and overcoats. Upon entering the building, they were warmly greeted by the lion's friend, Terence, a tall owl who was the owner of the house and grounds. Lysander, I have not seen you in such a long time. Welcome. And so this must be young Cendric. What a charming fellow. Cendric instantly found his mannerisms a tad strange. Terence couldn't have been more than 5 years older than Lysander, and the lion was only a couple of years older than Cendric. Yet he was addressing both of them as if he were their grandfather. He tried to come up with a possible explanation for this. Perhaps the owl had exclusively been brought up by older members of his household. But this also didn't quite add up, since he seemed to be well acquainted with plenty of young noblemen and women. He'd have to ask Lysander about this later that evening. Terence shook the coyote's hand softly before turning back to face the lion. Oh, you won't believe it. Rudyard is here. He actually showed up after everything he did. Goodness gracious, the absolute nerve that serpent has. After the scandal, too? Cendric gazed around the entrance as the other two grew engaged in the latest gossip. It was certainly very impressive. The marble floors, the statues all around complementing the building's neoclassical design. Noticing the lack of engagement on Cendric's part, Terence redirected his attention to the coyote. Well, I must say it is a pleasure to meet you at last. We've heard much about you, sir. Cendric smiled, unsure of what to say. Pleasure's all my... Terence, before we get carried away, do you think any lady of good standing and of a wealthy background would be interested in such a lad as Cendric? The coyote rolled his eyes. He appreciated Lysander's attempts, as it was a good idea for someone who had fallen on hard times such as himself to find a wife who could help out money-wise and offer him a chance to get back into polite society. But Cendric wasn't sure the line knew what the word subtlety ever meant. Not my place to say. But, if you must ask, allow me to suggest a few dance partners who might suit you and young Cendric here. Follow me. The country tunes echoing across the halls grew louder as the owl led them to the ballroom, where the dances had begun just a few minutes earlier. It was a beautiful and spacious hall, decorated with fine dark red wallpaper and littered with gorgeous works of art displayed with intricately designed frames. The central chandelier hanging from the ceiling as well as the many other lights illuminated the room almost theatrically, the subtle and flickering light dancing on the walls and surfaces. The dancers were already engaged in polite conversation and moved elegantly upon the shiny wooden floor, performing their steps with ease. The owl subtly gestured at one of the dancers, an elegant tall doe in a pastoral, green and pink silhouette gown. That's young Elizabeth Hawkins. She hails from a wealthy northeastern family and is a most pleasing and clever lady. And just behind her, that is Hortense Williams. Cedric glanced at the girl Terence was referring to, a plump sparrow whose most notable feature other than her gentle demeanor was her beautiful flowery hat. Her family's name has connections to the East India Company. She is a very witty girl and extremely well read too. What a coincidence. You like books, don't you, Cedric? Oh hush, Ly. The lion leaned over to Terence. Of course, no woman would be a good enough match for this hound. Of course, of course. I'd be best to go greet some of the latecomers now. But good luck to the both of you. Have a lovely evening. With a polite bow, the owl left the two, disappearing into the crowd. Come on, Cedric. What are you waiting for? Lysander took the coyote's hand and dragged him closer to the two women Terence had pointed out, just as one of the first dances came to a close. Stepping forward boldly, the lion claimed their attention. Good evening, ladies. May each of us have the honor of leading you for the next dance? The couple returned a polite smile. You may, sirs. Elizabeth walked over to Cedric, extending her hand, which the coyote bent down to kiss. My, such a courteous young lad. I certainly haven't gotten such a greeting as yours yet this evening. What is your name? Cedric, ma'am. Elizabeth. Pleasure. A booming voice echoed throughout the hall, belonging to one of the servants who was announcing which dance was to follow. Gentlemen and ladies, the next dance will be The Collier's Daughter. The musicians began to play an elegant tune, and the moment they did so, the dancing and socializing resumed like clockwork. And where do you hail from, Cedric? I'm a local, you could say. A town just about half an hour from here, though my family is actually related to the Durrells from Bath. Ah, charming. They are most delightful people indeed. Small talk really wasn't his forte, but a social event warrants social interaction, and Cedric seemed to be off to a decent start. I, though sadly had fallen on hard times as of late. Are you acquainted with Emily Durrell by chance? Cedric smiled. Emma's my second cousin. She's accompanied me on many long summer walks here in the countryside over the years. And what are your favorite pastimes, if I may ask? Sketching, painting, traveling, attending orchestral performances, opera. I tend to prefer the arts to more physical activities, something which can elevate the soul beyond our everyday life. As he spoke, his gaze drifted to Lysander and Hortense, who were conversing close by. He picked up on Lysander's glancing his way a few times, but didn't think much of it. The lion must have been curious to see how Cedric was getting on. He looks jealous. What about you, Miss Elizabeth? I admire your poetic view. However, I do prefer physical pastimes myself. I spent a lot of time horse riding and have done so since I was a child. You'd probably consider that to be a manly activity, but I have no time for such notions. I suppose that's something that you ought to know about me. The coyote breathed an internal sigh of relief. He had been worried that he'd only end up talking to the stuffy and snobbish folks at this event, but was glad to have found someone who wasn't afraid of being more honest. Your progressive thoughts do not fall on deaf ears, Miss Elizabeth, especially since during my childhood I was oftentimes scolded for having such feminine interests. As you are not a woman, you might not recall this, Mr. Cedric, but my sisters and I were brought up on these awful old books teaching us ladylike manners. I'd have them all burned if I had any say about their publishing. Cedric replied jokingly. Literary censorship is a heavy topic, Miss Elizabeth, quite unbecoming of a ballroom. Most men are quite unbecoming of a ballroom, and yet here they are. It was hard for the two not to burst out laughing as the dance came to a close and they bowed to each other. This conversation had exceeded Cedric's expectations to the point that he genuinely hoped that he'd get a chance to have a more casual back and forth with the doe. It was a pleasure dancing with you, sir. Perhaps we may speak again in half an hour or so. I'd enjoy that very much. Certainly, miss, and the pleasure is all mine. Lysander and Cedric swapped partners for the following dance, the coyote introducing himself to Hortense, as gracefully as he had done with Elizabeth with a flash of newfound confidence, causing the sparrow to grow red in the face. Gentlemen and ladies, the next dance will be the 10-pound lass. I've been told you're an avid reader, Mr. Cedric. I hope Lysander hasn't said anything too embarrassing to you regarding my person. Apologies in advance if so. But indeed, I always enjoy immersing myself in another world, or a different part of our own world for a few hours, or even days depending on the book. The sparrow grinned. I know the feeling well. Have you ever been too immersed in a story? What do you mean? As in, immersed to a point that you're almost unable to go back to reality once you've put the book down. It is such a tonal clash. Your mind doesn't want to accept the fact that the novel that you've just read isn't real. Cedric pondered the thought for an instant. That's fascinating, though I can't really say that I have. Wait a moment. You're right. There was one novel that did that to me. I was unable to think for 2 days after finishing it. It hit too close to home. A reality that I wish was my own, more than any other story that I've read. It was... I apologize. I didn't mean for the conversation to get so personal. Nonsense. I'm the one who brought up the subject up in the first place. And it just goes to show that you're a sensitive soul, Mr. Cedric. It was at this moment Cedric realized Lysander was staring at him again. This began to unnerve the coyote as he wondered if he had gotten anything on his shirt or messed up his hair without realizing. He briefly turned to look in one of the hall's large mirrors, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Perhaps he'd said something unbecoming without thinking? It wouldn't have been the first time that happened. He wished the lion would stop playing games with him and just be straightforward sometimes, but he had no chance of confronting until the dance was over, and all he could feel with each passing step was that unsettling, piercing gaze. You and your friend are dressed very finely this evening. Cedric returned to his senses, replying to Hortense with a slight stutter. Why, thank you. It's nothing over the top, but we do like taking care of how we present when it comes to social events. He chuckled. Though once we attended a masquerade ball and wore the most insane outfits for it. That was a laugh that we still had stored away somewhere. I could show you if you ever chose to pay us a visit. I'd most certainly love that. As their second dance came to a close, the two bowed and stepped to the side of the room. A group of younger girls rushed up to them, surrounding Cendric before he could even have a chance to speak to the lion. Good evening, sir. My name is Belle, and these are my sisters, Jeanette, and my friends Rosa and Sarah. We just wanted to say that we think you look exceedingly handsome. The others gasped at Sarah's bluntness. Sarah, really? It's true. Would you do us the honors of leading one of us in the next dance? Cedric grinned at their enthusiasm, feigning a confident attitude and deepening his voice. Certainly, as long as I don't create a feud between you depending on which of you lovely girls I pick. As he jokingly spoke those words, a furious Lysander violently stormed past them, vanishing among the other guests. What was wrong with him? He usually prided himself on etiquette at these sort of events. Had Cedric done or said something to upset him? He excused himself with the young girls and rushed over to Elizabeth and Hortense. The two had been offered a couple of wine glasses by one of the waitresses, and picked up a third one from the tray to give to Cedric the moment that they saw him approach. "Mr. Cedric, please have a drink with us. We'd love to chat a bit more with you." "I'm awfully sorry, Miss Elizabeth, Miss Hortense, but I can't. My friend just rushed off without us saying a word." Their eyes widened. Do you have any idea where he might have been heading to? Did he tell either of you by any chance?" "No, I'm afraid not." "Is everything all right? There seems to be something a little off about him, even though I hardly know the man." "Thank you so much, ladies. I have to go looking for him, as he's my only ride back home for tonight. I'll see you again soon, I hope." "Most certainly. Have a lovely evening, sir." Cedric wasn't able to hide his frustration at this turn of events. He made his way towards the entrance hall again, as that was the direction that he'd seen Lysander go in, but this was to no avail. The lion was nowhere to be seen there either. Turning to look back into the ballroom, Cedric noticed the familiar shape of an owl sliding amongst the guests. Chasing after, he yelled out Terrence's name, trying to be heard over the music and the other guest's voice. This worked on the third attempt, and Terrence finally came to a halt and politely nodded upon noticing who had been calling him. "Cedric, what seems to be the matter?" "I'm sorry. Have you seen Lysander? I can't find him anywhere." The owl wasn't able to hide a pinch of annoyance upon being disturbed for what sounded like a trivial issue. "I'm afraid not. I was busy talking to some guests till a moment ago. How about you try asking one of my servants in the entrance hall? If Lai was headed that way, they might have seen him walk past." "Ah, yes. Good idea." Cedric ran to the main hall, getting the attention of two servants standing near the door as each quick step he took on the marble floor echoed all around. He spoke up after catching his breath, growing more and more stressed out by the minute. "Excuse me. Have you seen a tall lion with a dark mane walk past? Perhaps he went outside?" "We've seen many guests come in and go, sir, and it's nigh impossible to keep track of all of them." Why was every person he asked irritated by this question? Rage began to bubble up within the coyote until the other servant broke the silence. "I saw a lion walk past just a couple of minutes ago." "You did?" "He didn't tell us where he was headed. He didn't even look at us, as a matter of fact, but yes, he was headed outside." "He must have needed a breath of fresh air. These events could get rather stuffy, you know." "Mind your tongue, you. You're speaking to a gentleman." "Our apologies, sir." The coyote darted away again without waiting for the two to finish their back and forth, running down the entrance's steps two at a time, crossing the gravel path and reaching the damp grass. "Lysander!" He called out his friend's name but received no reply. He couldn't have left. No way. Why the fuck didn't he tell me where he was going? He almost didn't notice a large fountain in front of him and managed to just avoid tripping over and falling into the icy cold water. A more natural-looking wooden area now appeared before him, almost sinisterly beckoning him to enter it if he dared so. "Lie. Please. Where are you?" He stood still, trying to discern any sign of movement close by. This was stupid. He should have just headed back to the manor house. Surely Elizabeth or Hortense could offer to give him a ride home. With a sudden rustling of leaves, a dark shape emerged and brushed past the coyote. Cedric almost jumped out of his skin. "What the?" "Leave me alone. Now is obviously not the right time." "What happened? What's wrong?" "I can't help you if you don't tell me anything." He chases after the lion, struggling to keep up with him, until they reach the steps of the manor house. "Was it something that I said?" Lysander addressed one of the servants, ignoring his friend and avoiding even looking in his direction. "Go fetch our carriage. We're going home. This was a mistake." Cedric had to fight back tears. "Why? I want to know why." "I've changed my mind about this, and that's final. I'm staying here." "Don't you dare, or you won't have a home to return to." After hearing those words, Cedric could almost feel the liquid seeping out of the hot wound inflicted on his chest. How could his friend turned so cruel after being so kind earlier this evening. If this was about impressing the ladies, Lysander had absolutely no right to speak on the matter. He was the one that had set Cedric up, and things had gone much better than expected, much to the coyote's relief. He was certain that he didn't have any stronger feelings for either of the two women that had meant beyond mere friendship. If this was just about jealousy, Lysander had no need to be worried. He suspected the lion had grown jealous at the thought of Cedric having other friends to rely on other than him. But if this was really the case, he should have just taken his friend aside and spoken to him like an adult instead of throwing this childish tantrum. He decided that he was going to take a long walk in the morning to avoid spending any more time with Lysander until he received an apology. At this point, it almost felt like the lion had been expecting things to go wrong, like some sort of cruel practical joke that he had planned at the coyote's expense. Cedric didn't say another word the entire journey home, and only broke the silence to wish Lysander a good night before retiring to his room. He unbuttoned his waistcoat and with a long, deep sigh, he sat down on the bed to take off his shoes. That's when every negative emotion that he had felt that evening hit him all at once with an almost inconceivable force. He burst into tears, burying his muzzle into the bed pillows to muffle the sound of his sobs. He couldn't keep this up. Something needed to change. He felt trapped and completely alone. What awful reality had he dug himself into? Life had to be better than this. Despite Cedric's efforts to not be heard, his sobs still reached Lysander's ears. The lion was standing inches from the door to his friend's room, frozen in place. Part of him wanted to burst in there, hug the coyote and have a long, earnest conversation about what had just happened earlier that evening. But he knew that he wasn't going to do that. The guilt that he was feeling wasn't strong enough. As much as it hurt, he didn't regret forcing them both to leave. Inside that ballroom, he'd realized that contrary to what he'd been telling himself till then, he wasn't ready to let Cedric go. In fact, the mere thought of his friend running off with one of the two women they'd met, never to be seen again, terrified him. Surely the reason that he'd been helping Cedric out, for the time being, was out of goodwill and nothing more. He shook his head. This was the greatest lie that he'd told himself. Lysander needed someone like Cedric around, someone he could talk to and share things with, someone who was willing to have more personal conversations with the lion, whom he could be more vulnerable with, without being afraid of mockery. He'd done the right thing. They were both safe. Cedric was still his. And that's where we're going to leave it for today. So yeah, we were focusing on Lysander this time around. And it was kind of obvious, I suppose, from what we've seen, that Lysander already was growing a little bit too attached to Cedric. And I say it in that way, like a little bit too attached, because we kind of can also see that Lysander is also a little bit toxic in the way that rather than confronting his feelings for his friend Cedric, he just is internalizing it as like anger and like I don't want people to talk to him, and I don't want him to get close to somebody else because then they're gonna take him away from me. And like, it's obvious we're talking about little rich boy who hates his family and whose family probably also dislikes him. I mean, he lives with his grandmother. And even I think with her, he doesn't really have like a really good relationship with her. It's more like, oh, you old bag, I can't wait for you to die. But yeah, like he doesn't like his mom and his dad, and they seem to be very dismissive of him, which probably would probably explain why he doesn't like them. And then all of a sudden we have Cedric here, who like will listen to him, who's very artsy, who's very unconventional. They probably have like some very unconventional talks that he relishes in, without actually saying that, like, oh, I actually like having these talks with you, even, because I can't have them with like all my other friends who I just gossip with. And, I can't have it with all my other gentleman friends who would probably think very weird of me. So that's probably the reason why he was so attached to Cedric, and why he wants him bad so badly, even though, this is a very unhealthy attachment, as we can see. I mean, like, as soon as Cedric said, you know what, I'm leaving, I can't stand you, Lysander anymore, and like whatnot, he didn't take that well, and now he's like hunting after him. But anyways, so things are probably not going to turn out well when they eventually meet again. Didn't they already meet like previously? I think they were when they were in the previous or this camp. I think Cedric saw Lysander, but I don't think they talked. I forget. I don't know. Whatever. I'm too sick to think right now. Anyway, so yeah, what are your comments so far? What do you think is going to happen when they eventually meet? And when are they going to meet? And what do you think Lysander's going to do to both Cedric and Vincent? Because I'm pretty sure that things are not just going to end with Lysander finding Cedric and saying, like, you're coming with me. He's probably going to do something to Vincent because he, quote unquote, took him away. Anyway, so, write down in the comments, and thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play A Fall from Grace, you can do so by going down to the link in the description, which will have a direct link for the itch.io page where you can download the game and play it yourself. And as you can see on the bottom right here, there is the Twitter links. Although I'll probably also post the blue sky instead for Alex, Lion, and Grayson. Though, be aware, it's not just the story that you'll see on their links. But yeah, anyway, so they do have a Patreon in case you want to support the project. It's a very good project. It did take a while to update, but this was a good update. I do like the story. I like that it's a very grounded story. It's a very good story. I do like it. I'm hoping for more updates from the other things that they do from like the group, which also includes Eden's Reach, which did release a devlog of how they're going. They're still working on it. And for One Last Night, I think that's what it's called, which should be releasing an update very, very soon. So yeah. Anywho, so also my link's down in the description in case you want to, help support the channel by becoming a channel member, getting early access to the videos as they're scheduled. And, again, help support the channel and me. Also, I'm too sick to be doing this right now. What was the thing? Oh, Ko-fi, in case you want to support me through a one-time donation. It's there in the description, as well as Throne, in case you want to, like, buy me something. Anyway, so yeah, I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.